Welcome. I'm Pastor Phil from 1027 Ministries. And this month we are reading through the book of Genesis as a congregation. Each day I am posting a video clip trying to give a couple nuggets, a couple highlights about that day's piece, not trying to go in depth. Volumes have been written about Genesis. It's packed, there's lots to it, but I want to give a few nuggets to think about. Now, I want to start with this. I mean, we all know that Genesis 1 and 2, first book of the Bible, first chapters of that book, it's about creation. Okay, we all know that. But there are some parts of the Bible, most of the Bible, if you don't know the context in which this was written, don't know the culture, don't know the geography, don't know the people or the language, you can still get great nuggets out of that. Psalm 23 is a beautiful example of that. You can read Psalm 23 without any other background, any other information, and still revel in that poetry, knowing that God is wondrous, providing for us, watching over us, helping us in our worst moments. But in the case of the creation, it really, really helps to have some background on the setting at the time. Now, our Western mindset that we're reading through it today, we have this habit to parse every word, every syllable, every nuance in the language. And that's a mistake for many reasons. First of all, Genesis wasn't written in English. So when we parse so many of our words in English, we're parsing a translation that was not done accurately or point for point. Hebrew is a conceptual language, English a definitional language, so it's impossible to make an exact translation. The Hebrew mindset, and that's the mindset of the writer, is very different. The Hebrew mindset knew we could never completely fathom God. We could never understand all the nuances about God. God created the universe. We didn't, we can't. We can't create planets. We can't create stars. We've only traveled to one planet, and that's just with a probe. People have never gone to it themselves. God can do all these things. So the Hebrew mindset, knowing that we couldn't completely fathom God, completely understand all these details, was not to try. They were trying to explain what they knew, that God created. God is great. And they certainly tried to give a picture. That's another key about the Hebrew language. A lot of times it is in pictures, trying to help understand things. So that's why we see creation happening with the stars in the sky, water versus land, night, day, animals, plants, all those kinds of things. We need to be careful about trying not to read into things that are not there. We have that habit too much. A lot of times in Christianity today, we see science and Christianity at odds. They weren't meant to be. The original writer was not a scientist, had no concept of telescopes or microscopes or all those details. It was not meant to be a treatise on all of those things. We need to be careful not to do that as well. It's nice seeing all these pictures. Let me give a couple of thoughts about what we read here. Remember, this was not somebody who was witnessing the event, taking notes or transcribing. This was a person to whom God later revealed what happened on creation, Moses, and then writing it down. I say that because if you were to transcribe this clip, you would get very different words than what would happen if somebody asked me, oh, can you tell me what happened? And I would probably regurgitate some of it, maybe get some highlights, but I wouldn't get every word point for point exactly the same. And that's what's going on here. Moses is writing it down as God revealed it to him hundreds of years later. He was not there at the time this happened. Let me point out a couple more things. We see in verse 5, God had the first day. It was the end of the day. And God, in verse 8, God says it's the end of the second day. But how do we define a day? Well, a day is a 24-hour period, and that's the length of time it takes for the Earth to rotate on its axis one time. Okay, well, that's cool. But I mention that because it's not until verse 14 that we have this idea of day and night. In verse 14, let there be lights in the firmament, in the sky, of the heavens to divide the day from night, and let them be signs for seasons to keep days and years. So this idea of keeping time and days and years and all this didn't come in until verse 14, but we've recorded it in verses 5 and 8 and these other ones. And they could do that because this was written after the fact. That's not a bad thing. It's just trying to keep that in mind. The way it was written, the Hebrew word yom, used for the English word day, meant to convey a 24-hour period. But like I say, we know Moses wasn't there. What he was saying after the fact. Let me highlight another piece. Genesis 1:26. Let us make man in our own image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, over all the earth, over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. Nice verse 126. But it starts with let us, plural. And the original Hebrew is plural too. Well, if God created anything, why is this plural? Who is God referring to? Now, this is an example we cannot say 100% we know it's this. We know it's this. We can only speculate. Now, it's nice to speculate, so let's give thought. What possibilities could there be? Some people say it was referring to the parts of the Trinity. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, different parts of God, different faces of God. If you want to go down this road, I ask, are there other places in the Bible where we see this happening? Well, in the Gospels, we see Jesus praying to God the Father. They're communicating. Okay, so I guess it's possible. But if it's the same individual, it seems odd here. Another possibility, let us. Who is the plural? Who is he talking to? Some people say maybe God is talking to the animals. They were already created. I say no, because let us implies that it is somebody else who is part of the creative process. Animals weren't part of the creative process. They were created like we were. We don't see any other parts of the Bible where God is talking to animals like they're doing something together. God uses animals for his purpose, for his mission, but that's different. So I don't think that it's the animals. Any other possibilities? One more. What if it's God talking with the angels? We do see that throughout the Bible, God uses angels for his purpose. We see how he uses them to help, sometimes as communicators, sometimes as warriors, all sorts of things. Okay, so maybe God did use the angels in some way, helping with some part of this. It's very possible, because we know that there were angels before there were people. So we can only speculate here, but just to think about that for a minute. And like I say, we can't say for sure, no matter which way you go with this. You may say, okay, if the writer is not trying to convey details, like God spoke and it was there, and as opposed to all the scientific things that may have happened, what's the point? Why not say, God created everything? Sure, you could say, the writer is trying to highlight a few things. God created the stars in the skies, the planets. God created day and night, land, air, animals, plants, all that. You could. But is there more to it? Oh, yes. We see other creation narratives in the ancient Near East, the Babylonians and Sumerians and all sorts of things like that. But one thing that's unique here is how much it focuses on humans. And you're saying, wait a minute, humans didn't come into the picture until day 6, after God had created here and here and here. Let me give you a different perspective. Too often as we read through the creation story, we read through it like, okay, well, God had done this first and God had done that. And lastly, God did the people. Maybe like an afterthought. Okay. I don't think that's the way to think about it, though. I think the way to think about it is that all those other pieces for creation were just prelude to the main piece of creation, people. Why would I say that? Let me give you an example for today. Let's say you've got a husband and wife, and the wife is pregnant for the first time. They're going to be first-time parents, have that new baby. Joy, oh, they're so thrilled. Now, before that birth happens, they're doing lots of preparation. Maybe they're painting their nursery, the room this child's going to live in. They're getting the crib and they're building it, getting clothes and diapers and toys and all sorts of things to care for the baby. And so there's lots going on leading up to, now here's this child. And what happens when you bring that child home from the hospital? Sure, you're tired, but there's lots of other things to do. There's always more to do in caring for a child. But so many scenes as here's the father or the mother rocking this child to sleep, enjoying looking at this beautiful, wondrous creation that is a part of them. That's the way to think about the creation story. God spent these other days laying the groundwork, preparing for the big finale of creating people. Why would I say that? Because in every other day, God did it and it was good. Day 2 and it was good. Then day 3 and it was good. But when he created people, it was very good, because that's what he was doing all along. Everything else was being prepared for people. And then after that, he had the Sabbath. Not because God needed the rest. There's plenty to do. Here's more God could have done. But God was enjoying that moment. All that had gone into it to create this wonderful place with everything needed for the people. And now it's here and people are there. So God takes a moment to revel in that and just bask in that. So this creation story is here because it is highlighting people and how much God places on the value of people and all that God does for people. When you look at it from that lens, sending his son to die for people is not such a leap for God, is it? That's what I want you to think about as you read through Genesis 1 and 2. Enjoy.